Hey, 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 it's your girl, your favorite paralegal, aka Cassandra Lynn, and welcome to Legal Doc Talk 24/7. Today, we are going to finish up the last portion of the 114-page complaint that was filed by Miss Andria English against Sean Combs, all of his businesses, Tamiko Thomas, Jacob the Jeweler, Vibe Magazine, and John Doe's, Jane Doe's organizations that was filed on about to say September, July 3rd, 2024. This complaint is very, very lengthy. Um, she pretty much, as everybody knows now, uh, that she was adult entertainment industry before anything, and she ended up making a move because her family, I guess she was doing this and it leaked out her consent, and a lot of family and friends, were, you know, aware of it. And, I get it. She was embarrassed. And so she wanted to make a clean slate, and I believe she ended up moving to New York where she met your boy, Diddy. And she started working for him. That's the best way I can put that. She started work with him at the white parties where he was directing her to do some lady of the night activities and ingesting narcotics, and it emotionally damaged her. Um, when she was no longer wanting to participate in these activities, she ended up moving back to Cali. And this was after he pretty much blackballed her and her at that time boyfriend. And now she is coming out wanting to I don't want to say get her piece of the pie because I don't want to describe it like that. But under certain acts in New York, she is able and allowed to be compensated for the emotional damage that she has endured over that time until now. So let's go ahead and hop on to getting into the rest of this 114-page document. Now, what we left off last time kind of threw me for a loop, only because, and I'm gonna swap this around so you guys see. It was the grant the plaintiff an incentive or service award to reflective of the work done in uh, prosecuting this action, the time spent, the effort and hard cost invested, and results obtained in the light of the court's judgment and informed by awards and other similar cases of comparable difficulty and complexity. Um, a service award, an incentive. This part is new to me. I've never heard of somebody getting a service award for filing a lawsuit, even if they win. I, how can I say this? It's different if they were all collectively coming together and they were trying to fight what has happened to them on behalf of other women who may have gone through these similar instances. I could see that if it was for a cause. You're just simply telling your story and you are wanting to be compensated for the damages that, based off the activities that you participated in involuntarily, allegedly, during your time with Diddy. So we're gonna see how this goes. All right. So going into, and I had to go through all of this because there are a total of 30, let me see, a total of 30 causes of actions, and there's no sense of me reading each page to yeah, because we'll be here all day. So I summarized, and I just wanted to highlight some of the causes of actions and then move on to the next one. So basically, throughout this complaint, yes, they are pointing out each individual who had a part in this overall complaint, but there are also, and when I say they, I mean the plaintiff and her attorneys, they are also putting them in as a collective, the Combs Enterprises. And that's why you see the racketeering, the RICO portion of that. Now, to kind of over what RICO is, that's the Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organizations Act. And that was a law that was passed in 1970. And what it did, it was to help eliminate organized crime and racketeering from legitimate businesses. That's why you see Vive and PNC and Sean John and Bad Boys Entertainment listed in this complaint. But what it does, this particular act or law, it actually strengthens the law enforcement's ability to gather evidence and prosecute organized criminals by increasing the criminal penalties and providing new remedies. So when we see what happened with Diddy, even though this is a Diddy case, where his house got raided, that federal level. That was on the federal level. So pretty much, like I said before, and I keep saying this, with these civil cases, these cases, no matter if we think that they're bogus or not, or these women are just filing to get money, that's not what I want us to focus on. I want us to focus on the evidence that comes out in these cases that will help with those federal cases, right? And then also the Comb Enterprise, they did list that in there. Was involved in these organized crimes. So like the SAing, the sexual harassment, the trafficking, the drug trafficking, and the fraud. All of that is considered organized crime. And all of those defendants, Combs, Jacob the Jeweler, Vibe Magazine, Tamiko Thomas, all of those individuals made up the Combs Enterprise collectively, and that's why they go on under that RICO. Yeah. All right. So going into our second, so the second and third causes of action is dealing with SAing and harassment against Combs and Jacob the Jeweler, because as we see throughout the petition, Combs, he directed her to do these things, dress up a certain way, participate in these certain activities, and Jacob the Jeweler was the one that actually participated in those activities. So let's see. So as far as the essaying and harassment against defendant Combs, it does state in here that he frightened and placed plaintiff in apprehension of harm when he forced and coerced plaintiff to engage in Lady of the Night activities for him during his white parties from 2004 to 2009 when he was in Miami, Florida, and New York. Let's see. It also, he used threats and coercion to force her to engage in Lady of the Night activities and acts with partygoers at his white parties. He directed plaintiff to engage in Lady of the Night activities with Mr. Jacob the Jeweler against her will at the white party in the Hamptons, New York. Let's see. Defendant Combs may have directed others to engage in Lady of the Night activities with the plaintiff while she was unconscious at the white parties in Miami. And this just goes on because of um, his conduct. She suffered physical injury, emotional distress, anxiety, humiliation, among other consequential damages that's actually entitled to get funds from or be compensated for. All right, so that is against Diddy. This is against Jacob. Same thing, essaying and harassment. Let's see. So here it is that defendant Jacob Combs and Thomas frightened and placed plaintiff in apprehension of harm of physical and essaying while employed as entertainment at defendant Combs parties. Plaintiff was forced to engage in Lady of the Night activities with defendant Jacob against her will while the white party was occurring. And pretty much because that happened, once again, she suffered harm, continues to suffer harm, physical injury, emotional distress, humiliation, anxiety, so on and so forth. Now, this is the fourth cause of action is the SAing against defendant Doe's. So we know at the white parties there were plenty of men there. And we know that Diddy allegedly instructed her to do Lady of the Night activities with various men at these white parties. Now, the reason that they're Doe's is because we don't know who they are. Until and how do I'm trying to think how I answer these in discovery. As discovery is ongoing, you get information in. So we might get a party list or emails. I can't even remember. Well, yeah, emails, whatever the case may be, where we can actually track the attendees at those parties. That is probably when we will start seeing more people show up, and I'm sure they will have to amend the petition in order to include those newly found defendants. But they we have to make sure that we cover all bases, so that's why we have to defendant those. So to each of those men at those white parties that participated in, they physically and that word assaulted her at the white parties in Miami. They forcibly touched and attempted to touch plaintiff intimate areas and or touch plaintiff with their own body parts. Upon information and belief, defendant Doe's touched plaintiff intimate areas while plaintiff was unconscious from forced narcotics used by defendant Combs. Defendant Combs and or Thomas failed to intervene. So because of those acts, once again, she suffers and continues to suffer physical injury, emotional distress, humiliation, anxiety, and other consequential damages in which she's entitled to. Now, a lot of people ask, and I'm trying to get my thoughts together, why come out now after all these years? And when we don't know the different types of acts or the laws that are out there that will allow victims to come out and tell their story, we just assume that they are filing because they want money. Same thing with Cassie. I believed Cassie from the rip. I've always had a negative feeling about Diddy. And this is not putting my bias on anybody. It's just that he just seemed off. You know, people have some discernment about people. Okay, you can just look in their eyes and tell that they're not right. But I believed Cassie from the start. So a lot of people around were saying she was just doing this for money, blase, blase, blase. And then look what happened. A video surfaced of her and him, or really just him, beating her up. And now all of a sudden people want to say, oh man, this happened. And then he wants to issue a public apology to us, not to her, because if you were truly sorry, you would have reached out to her directly. But anywho's, I want to cover why they are allowed at this time to file these suits and go after these, I call them predators, monsters, whatever. These are the reasons. So the fifth cause of action is the New York City Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Protection Act. That's against all of the defendants that is listed in this complaint. Now, this particular act was created to help abusers, not abusers, to help the abused or the victims overcome these, make it easy for them to recover. Now, why they didn't call the police at that time so this man could be arrested, we don't know. But the statute of limitations have passed for him to be charged and possibly convicted. So since that time frame has passed, they have to have some type of act or law that helps the victims get compensated at least to recover what they deserve. You see what I'm saying? So by them filing up under these acts, they are able to entitle them to certain compensation for damages like pain and suffering. You will always hear that, pain and suffering. Now this act actually extends the statute of limitations for survivors of gender-based to file civil lawsuits against their abusers and institutions that enable the abuse. Now, the statute of limitations in New York is now 9 years from the date of assault. And in some cases, if the survivor was a minor or disabled, it can be extended to 9 years. But now the law also includes what's called a 2-year look back window that actually allows survivors to file claims for instances that occurred before the statutes of limitations. And that window in New York is actually open. It opened on March 1st, 2023, and it will close on March 1st, 2025. So I'm sure that Diddy is not going to be the first nor the last individual that's going to be sued based off of this act. And I have a list of other individuals that were also sued for uh, similar takes or acts that Diddy did. And that this right here, it is a little bit draining. So I'm definitely going to try to switch it up because it breaks my heart to see that all of these, women were victims, women and men were victims, and they're now telling their story. So I am sympathetic for that. But I feel like there are way more people out there that are looking at this and at least having some type of comfort saying, okay, my time to tell my story. And I hope that they come out and do this. So pretty much, as I said before, this particular act, it's one against all defendants. Let me see. And so this revives any claims against a party who commits, directs, enables, participates in, or conspires in the commission of a crime of violence motivated by gender, has cause of action against such party in any court of competent jurisdiction. So Combs, Thomas, Jacob, the jeweler, because they forced plaintiff to engage in Lady of the Night activities, that constitutes as a crime of violence against if it is also a crime of violence motivated by gender. Let's see. It says this cause of action is timely because it is commenced within 2 years and 6 months after September 1st, 2022. Let's see. Defendants' crimes of violence were motivated by plaintiff's gender, as defined in the New York City Administrative Code, as defendant Jacob committed forcible acts upon plaintiff that will constitute felonies under state law, and as the conduct presents a serious risk of physical injury, whether or not those acts have resulted in criminal charges, persecution, or conviction. The appellate division has held that SA is an act of gender motivated violence under the law as activity in dehumanizing and fear inducing or ill will based on gender is apparent from the alleged commission of the act itself. Let's see. And it says Combs, Thomas, and Jacob constitutes these offenses. A plaintiff is a woman who older than 18 who alleged misdemeanor and or felony penal law violation, including but not limited to sexual misconduct and abuse in the first and second degree, criminal acts, criminal sexual acts in the third degree and first degree. Combs coerced and forced plaintiff to engage in contact and or intercourse with defendant Jacob despite her refusal and willingness to do so. Combs demanded plaintiff to drink laced alcohol while in her employment capacity as entertainment at the white party. He knew or should have known that plaintiff was incapable of consenting to this contact or conduct. Combs and Jacobs' actions presented a serious risk of physical injury to the plaintiff, regardless of whether or not these acts resulted in criminal charges, persecution, or conviction. All right. So, like I said before, yes, we know that she could have went to the police, but regardless whether she went to the police or not, she is still protected under this act to be compensated because of their actions. Let's see. Furthermore, defendants, his organizations, including Vibe and PMC, enabled Combs commissioned of the crimes of violence motivated by gender and thus are liable under the NYC Victims of Gender Motivated Protection Act. So they was bringing in what they're saying is that these companies brought him funds and resources to be able to do these things. So they are just as responsible. Defendants Thomas, so pretty much everybody except for Diddy. So they're holding them accountable because they enabled and they participated in the trafficking of plaintiff because defendants failed to, among other things, protect plaintiff from a known danger, have sufficient policies and procedures in place to prevent SA, properly implement policies and procedures to prevent SA, take reasonable measures to ensure the policies to prevent SA while working, train their employees on identifying SA and appropriate workplace behaviors, protect their employees from SA, and adhere to the applicable standard of care. These defendants, BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PNC, enabled and or participated in a trafficking of plaintiff because they failed to timely and properly educate, train, supervise, and or monitor their agents or employees regarding policies and procedures that should be followed when SAing or when trafficking is suspected or observed. And I get this. I get this. You guys seen all of this happening and did absolutely nothing. You had no policies in place as to what you should have done to report this. I'm glad that all of them are being sued, to be honest. Maybe they'll think about their company policies and put some things in place now. Prior to defendant Combs forcing plaintiff into Lady of the Night activities, defendants BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PNC knew or should have known that defendant Combs was not fit to be in a position of authority by and through their agents, servants, and or employees became aware or should have become aware of defendant Combs that's blocked out, so I can't read it. Propensity, I don't even know what it is. Be aware of Combs to commit SA and of the risk of plaintiff's safety. At the very least, defendants knew or should have known that they did not have sufficient information about whether or not their leader, managers, and people were safe to be in the positions of power. Defendants BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PNC knew or should have known that Combs posed a risk of violence, sexual violence, assault, harassment, and trafficking. They failed to properly supervise Combs and protect plaintiff from any unknown danger, and thereby enabled Combs to traffic plaintiff. These defendants negligently deemed the defendant Combs was to be what was fit to be in a position of authority, and or that any previous suitability problems defendant Combs had were fixed and cured, and or that Combs would not commit acts of sexual assault, battery, harassment, or trafficking, and or that Combs would not injure others. Sorry, I had to take a little break. Let's see. Moreover, now these are Diddy's specific companies. Bad Boys Entertainment, Sean John, CGE enabled the trafficking of plaintiff by actively maintaining and employing Combs in a position of power and authority, through which Combs had control over people, including plaintiff. So, as a direct and proximate result of the aforementioned crime of violence and gender motivated violence, plaintiff has sustained and will continue to sustain monetary damages, physical injury, pain and suffering, and serious psychological and emotional distress, entitling her to an award of compensatory and punitive damages, injunctive and declaratory relief, attorney's fees, costs, and other remedies at the court may deem appropriate damages. Woo, woo, woo. Yes. Let's see. So that is under, okay. So overall, what it is saying is that under this act, it declared that defendant Combs engaged in unlawful practices prohibited by New York City Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Protection Act, in that Combs drugged and trafficked plaintiff. Violation. Going into, oh, let me go. Oh, I like these because it kind of summarizes which each person did. It is declared that defendants BBE, SGC, CGE, and Tamiko Thomas, Jacob the Jeweler, Vibe, PMC, Doe's, and Organization Doe's engaged in unlawful practices which are prohibited by the New York City Victims of Gender Motivated Violence, and that they enabled him commission of the crimes of violence motivated by gender. So the plaintiff is wanting damages for mental and emotional injury, distress, pain, suffering, and injury to her reputation, consequential damages, lost wages, earnings, and all of the sums of money together with interest on the amounts in amount to be proven. So they have to prove that, she has to prove all of this. She has to prove mental injury, emotional injury, pain, stress, all of that. I hope she has some documentation from a medical doctor. That will definitely help her case. The sixth cause of action, let's see. So the sixth cause of action is the premises liability for the SAing committed by defendant Jacob, and this is against Combs. So what they're saying is that because the activities and the incidents happened at Combs residences, either in Miami or in New York, Combs was responsible. He was responsible. Let's see. Plaintiff was trafficked to defendant Jacob at the White Party in 2007. In Hampton, New York, defendant was present along with other high-profile individuals while plaintiff was being assaulted by defendant Jacob during the party. Plaintiff legally on the premises as an employee of defendant Combs and BBE, SGC, and CGE. Defendant Jacob was legally on the premises owned by defendant Combs as a guest and invitee of defendant Combs. Defendant Combs owned the premises and had dominion and control over the premises where plaintiff was harmed. Defendant Combs had dominion and control over the actions of defendant Jacob and failed to step in and stop defendant Jacob from essaying plaintiff. As a property owner, he had a duty, and when I say he, Combs had a duty to protect the plaintiff from the harm she suffered at the hands of defendant Jacob. Defendant Combs breached his duty when he failed to stop Jacob from essaying plaintiff. In furtherance of this breach, defendant Combs demanded and encouraged defendant Jacob and possibly others to assault plaintiff. Plaintiff has suffered immensely because of defendant Combs' intentional breach of his duty. She has suffered and continues to suffer emotional distress, and the same thing I've been mentioning. That was the sixth. Now we're going into the seventh causes of action, which is the Trafficking and Victims Protection Act against all of the defendants individually. Now, this act prohibits forced labor, trafficking with respect to peonage, slavery, involuntary servitude, and trafficking of children or of others by force, fraud, or coercion. Now, the statute of limitations under this act is 10 years or 10 years after the victim has turned 18 if the offense occurred when they were when there was a minor. So how this act, let's see. What did they do? What did they do? Okay. So defendants here knowingly and intentionally participated in, perpetuated, assisted, supported, and facilitated a trafficking enterprise that was in and affecting interstate commerce together and with others in violation of 18 of the United States Code, Section 1591A1. Combs and Thomas knowingly and intentionally recruited, enticed, provided, obtained, advertised, and solicited by various means plaintiff, knowing the defendant Combs and Thomas would use means of force, threats of force, fraud, coercion, and a combination of such means to cause plaintiff to engage in these acts. So, what they're saying is that they threaten, look, I can take you out the game. I can pretty much blackball you, take away everything, not just yours, but also your boyfriend. You can lose everything. And that's why she did it. So not only was she forced, she was coerced into doing these things in a combination thereof. Very sad. And then not on top of that, you're not paying her. Well, you pay her and she can't negotiate her fee. Defendants BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, PNC, and others had actual knowledge that they were perpetrating and facilitating defendant Combs' abuse and trafficking conspiracy to recruit, solicit, entice, coerce, harbor, transport, obtain, and provide plaintiff as well as others into commercial Lady of the Night acts through the means of force, threats of force, fraud, abusive process, and coercion. Despite such knowledge, defendants intentionally paid for, facilitated, perpetuated, and participated in defendant Combs' violation, which defendants were reckless in reckless disregard of the fact that defendant Combs would coerce, defraud, and force plaintiff into to engage into Lady of the Night activities via commercial acts. Defendant's actions were in and affecting interstate commerce, including its distribution of marketing material and publishing acts, which Vibe magazine, which were in and affecting interstate commerce. By taking the concrete steps alleged in this complaint, defendants knowingly participated in trafficking furthered defendant Combs' trafficking enterprise. The concrete steps constitute taking a part in the trafficking enterprise and were necessary for its success. The concrete steps constituted active engagement by all defendants in defendant Combs' trafficking enterprise. Defendants knew that their active engagement would lead to and cause coercive commercial trafficking. In perpetrating TVPA violations upon information and belief, defendant Combs and Thomas willfully failed to file required tax with the federal government. Defendant's affirmative conduct was committed knowing and in reckless disregard of the facts. The defendant Combs would use cash and the financial support provided by defendants BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PNC as means of defrauding, forcing, and coercing acts from plaintiff, as well as others. Defendant's conduct was outrageous and intentional. Let's see. So they knew and intentionally caused the plaintiff harm, serious harm, without limitations to physical, psychological, emotional, financial, and reputational harm. Let's see. Yeah, this is definitely moral turpitude. Let's see. The eighth cause of action: aiding, abetting, and inducing a trafficking enterprise in violation of the TVPA. And this is against all of the defendants. So they are labeled as co conspirators to Diddy. Let's see. Now, this is how they're all connected. So BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PMC entered into a general partnership agreement with defendant Combs. As general business partners, each individual member is responsible for the actions of the partners of the partnership. Defendant BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PMC provide resources to defendant Combs to throw the lavish white parties. So they were pitching in too. According to plaintiff, the Combs RICO enterprise was engaging in trafficking activities during almost every white party, specifically those attended by plaintiff from 2004 to 2009. As a result of their intentional or negligent failure of duty to supervise, defendant BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, and PMC aided, abetted, and induced Combs trafficking enterprise that was in effect interstate commerce in violation of the United States Code. The crimes that defendant BBE, SGC, CGE, Vibe, PMC, Doe's, and organization Doe's aided and abetted are defendant Combs perpetrating of coercing trafficking in violation. Defendant Combs co-conspirators knowingly benefited from the coercive trafficking, which is also in a violation. These crimes were in affecting interstate commerce. They were not just happening in New York, but they were also happening in Florida. His co conspirators benefited financially and received things of value from their participation in Combs' trafficking enterprise, including payments and other compensation like Lady of the Night activities. Co conspirator Jacob received from defendants. So all of these co conspirators benefited financially. So Jacob say, "Hey, I'll do this if you give me this." And what did Diddy order plaintiff to do? So you're part of this too. Under the United States Code, as a result of their general business partnership with Defendant Combs and their failure to monitor Defendant Combs, Defendant BBE, SGC, CGE, VIBE, PNC, DOEs, and organization DOEs are punishable as a principal under 18 United States Code and thereby committed and perpetrated violations of Chapter 77 when it aided, abetted, counseled, commanded, induced, and procured Defendant Combs and his trafficking enterprise and the trafficking of the plaintiff and others. I would like to know who these others are, and I hope that they come forward. I really do. Under the U.S. Code, as a result of their general business partnership with Combs, they failed to monitor Combs, defendants BBE, SGC, CGE, VIBE, and PNC, those and organization those committed and perpetrated crimes in violation of the United States Code by abetting, aiding, inducing, and procuring defendant Combs and his trafficking enterprise and the trafficking of the plaintiff. So that's just kind of going over the same thing. So pretty much they provided him financially and um, provided him with the finances and resources in exchange for this. So that kind of helped the trafficking um, grow and the SAing, you know, and growing is probably not the word, but that's why it was ongoing, tit for tat. So they're responsible because they failed to monitor this man. Going down to the ninth cause of action. So the causes of action 9 through 18 is it says NIED, and that is the negligent infliction of emotional distress through trafficking. And this is against each individual defendant that's listed in this complaint. Yeah, it's a lot, so I'm not going to go through all of those. I'm just going to point out. So against defendant Combs, let's see, what did he do? Well, we already know what he did. That's a no-brainer. He created an unreasonable risk of causing emotional distress to the plaintiff. He should have known that such conduct will result in emotional distress and would likely cause illness or bodily harm. Same thing with Jacob the jeweler. Same thing with defendant Thomas, BBE, SGC. So all of his businesses. Okay. Now we get down to the 19th cause of action, and this is IIED. So this is a negligent infliction of emotional distress. And this is also against each individual. Let's see, it says defendant Combs engaged in conduct toward plaintiff that is extreme and outrageous to exceed the bounds of decency in a civilized society, namely by inter alia, subjecting him to essaying and misconduct. And this is going to be the same for each of those defendants. Yeah, that's why I was like, ooh, I had to go through here and summarize. It's basically just saying the same thing, that each of them, their conducts was extreme and outrageous, and this goes beyond, you know, a civilized matter. Okay, this part is, I really want you guys to pay attention to this part, and let me see. I have my notes. Okay, so this is knowing beneficiary in a trafficking enterprise in violation of the TVPA. Let's see. So defendants knowingly and intentionally benefited financially and by receiving things of value from participating in, assisting, supporting, and facilitating an illegal coercive trafficking enterprise that was in and affecting interstate commerce together and with others in violation of the United States Code. Defendants took several concrete steps to aid and participate in defendant Combs' trafficking enterprise. Among the concrete steps the defendants took to aid defendant Combs was providing unfettered access to resources in his control, which made the trafficking enterprise possible. Enabling defendant Combs with significant, unmonitored resources caused defendants to receive the benefits detailed throughout this complaint. Defendants' willingness to provide significant unmonitored resources to defendant Combs was a quid pro quo for it receiving the benefits detailed herein. Upon information and belief, the resources provided were necessary for defendant Combs to coerce plaintiff to engage in commercial Lady of the Night activities. The resources directly formed part of the commercial nature of the Lady of the Night acts. The resources were also a necessary and required part of defendant Combs' recruitment of plaintiff. By providing unchecked resources, defendant knew or should have known that the money would be used to fund the trafficking enterprise. Through their general business partnership with defendant Combs, defendants actively participated in the recruitment of trafficking victims to the enterprise. Whew. The unchecked resources that defendants provided went far beyond providing routine partnership or compensation to a general business partner. It was far from routine for defendants to provide substantial marketing and resources through the years to defendant Combs on his business ventures, including the white parties, who did not have an apparent legitimate need for such extravagant marketing resources. The sheer number of pages in which defendant Combs appear in one issue of defendant's Vibe and PNC publication went far beyond normal for the music industry. Defendants knew or should have known through reasonable inquiry that they were feeding defendant Combs that part. They were feeding his drive. Defendants provided extravagant marketing and resources to defendant Combs, which, under the circumstances of this case, was entirely inconsistent with the ordinary duties of a partner or general business partnership member. The reasons that the defendants ignored numerous red flags about defendant Combs was to receive financial benefit from the trafficking enterprise. Defendants knew that they would gain far from routine benefits by ignoring the red flags associated with Combs by participating in his enterprise. Among the concrete steps that defendants took to aid and participate in Combs' trafficking enterprise were um, legitimizing defendant Combs' white parties as legitimate, high profile networking events through intentionally false and misleading stories in the magazine. By cloaking the true nature of the white parties, defendants were able to continue the enterprise and receive benefits from its participation in the sex trafficking enterprise. Through their general business partnership agreement with defendant Combs, defendants adopted by association the intentional acts of their general business partner, defendant Combs, affirmative conduct causing defendants to receive those benefits. By taking the concrete steps outlined, along with the others alleged in this complaint, defendants knowingly participated in trafficking and further Combs' trafficking enterprise. The concrete steps above constituted taking part in trafficking enterprise and were necessary for its success. The concrete steps above constituted active engagement by defendants in Combs' trafficking enterprise. So this is just pretty much going on saying that they knew what was going on. But however, instead of them addressing the red flags, they benefited from it. They benefited from it. Oh, this says defendants knew of defendant Combs' deviant and violent behavior through the years of lawsuits, hush monies, settlements, and negative publicity surrounding defendant Combs as early as 2021, and most notably by Miss Cassie Ventura in 2023. Almost all the suits since Miss Ventura alleged defendant Combs was engaging in trafficking, among other things. Actions extend well beyond a situation of failing to train themselves and their staff about recognizing the warning signs of trafficking. Defendants did recognize the signs of Combs trafficking, which is why they prominently featured it in Defendant Vibe and PNC's November 2006 magazine publication of Vibe. Upon information and belief, indeed, defendants' employees knew about Combs' trafficking enterprise but decided to continue facilitating the Combs enterprise rather than ending its participation in the enterprise. Defendants Vibe and PMC were also in the business of promoting money for Lady of the Night activities as seen in a classified section of Defendants Vibe and PMC's November 2006 magazine. I don't think I'm just going to let y'all look. And I'm like, I understand why why my mama probably never let me. I used to go to the store, kind of look at these issues, but look at this. Do y'all see this? Look at this. Local text dating. Big booty DVDs. Free party line. Zip code dating. And that I had to redact this part up here. Let me get this on the screen so y'all can see. Do y'all see this? This is odd. This is odd. This is in the classified sections of Vibe magazine. Upon information and belief due to the facts that came to their attention through the complaint filed by Cassie Ventura and others accusing defendant Combs of trafficking, defendants knew to a certainty that Combs was engaged in trafficking. And they knew that he was engaged in trafficking victims, including plaintiff. There are more people out there. Let's see. Defendants helped to conceal the names of Combs' victims from the public and from law enforcement and prosecuting agencies by helping to conceal the existence of trafficking enterprise, including failing to get a release of plaintiff before publishing her picture in Defendant's Vibe and PNC's November 2006 magazine. Among the ways in which defendants helped to conceal enterprises existence by failing to properly monitor or audit defendant Combs to ensure that the resources provided were being used in a legal manner, as well as ensuring that the proper accounting and tax reporting was made to the federal government. You guys, it, me reading that part makes me think about the lady from Vibe magazine. She said she had an encounter with Diddy back in 97 or 98. He wanted to see the I guess the magazine cover and the contents before it was published. And as far as their policies, they're not allowed to do that. And so he made a comment to her pretty much about unaliving her or finding her unalived body in a trunk or something of that. I have to pull that up. But this man was crazy. But yet you guys still did business with him. That's the crazy part. Let's see, it just talks about the specific acts that is under the trafficking at the white parties that Jacob Vibe PMC they periodically attended And they're just saying that, ooh, yeah, they had the narcotics and the lady of the night workers present in the circumstances. So all of these people were present, but yet nobody questioned about these trafficking activities or the narcotics that was found at this place. And it's crazy because we look at the white parties and different photos, and you see Al Sharpton, you see some people who we are like not supposed to be there. And if this activities was happening there, I'm sure somebody knew, and everybody's responsible. Everybody's responsible. So Vibe and PMC is really on the forefront because you were advertising these white parties in your magazines. You were how can this is just sad. You knew this. So you went to the parties and you knew very well what was going on, but yet you continue to advertise this as networking events. And you get to the event and people are doing other stuff. Look at this. So their business partnership was with Combs and the white parties garnered legitimacy, immense success, and to access to the top emerging artists, celebrities, famous athletic figures, musicians, and international dignitaries like former President Donald Trump. Donald Trump at the white party. Defendants knew firsthand the power, influence, and the effect attaching themselves to defendant Combs would have on their bottom line, as evidenced by their repeated general business partnership with Combs, ranging from 1993 recently. And so the you know what? Hold up. Hold up. Because I want to go to this right quick. Let me see. I'm gonna say Combs threaten Vibe magazine. You yeah, we're gonna do this. Let me share the correct screen. So Vibe had a relationship with Diddy since the 90s. I want you guys to read this. Sean Combs allegedly threatened to see Vibe editor unalived in the trunk of a car over a cover dispute. Vibe's former editor in chief, Daniel Smith, claims Combs turned up to the magazine's office in 1997, demanding to see the cover image before the magazine servers disappeared. Oh man, I can't get into this. Let me see, because I'm not subscribing into y'all. Sean Diddy Combs allegedly threatened that former Vibe magazine editor in chief Dale Smith would be unalived in the trunk of her car after she refused to let him see his magazine ahead of publication. In a personal essay published in the New York Times Magazine on Friday, Smith wrote that in 1997, she selected cover star for Vibes magazine's December-January double issue. The photos for the shoot were inspired by the poster of the 1978 Warren Beatty film Heavyweight, featuring Combs and White Angel Wings. With a split run of the cover, each of the two would feature a different motive, with heavenly signifies and the other with hellish ones. Following the photo shoot, she recalled Holmes requesting to see the covers. Given this was against the policy for the magazine, Smith said she denied his request. After she told him no, she heard that he planned to come to the office and forced us to show him that we'd chosen and to make us choose something else if he didn't like what he saw. Smith was aware that in 1996, Combs was found guilty of criminal mischief of threatening a photographer of for the New York Post with a pow pow, but she said that she also knew that she had to have him on the cover. Fearing what Combs could do, Smith said that Vibe employees put together a plan to keep her safe in case Combs appeared as. Smith alleged that Combs entered the office with two security guards one day and asked the receptionist, "Where's Danielle?" It was then that the employees who had already been notified by the receptionist of Combs' arrival shuttled Smith from office to office, allowing her to narrowly escape in a taxi with the paper proofs of the covers in hand. The next day, she said that Combs called the office alleging that he made a threat. He wanted to see the covers. I was still on message. It's not what we do, Reed Smith. It was then that Combs told me, as I retold hundreds of times over the years, that he would see me unalived in of a car, not missing a beat. I told him he needed to take that threat back. When Smith threatened that she would call her lawyer if he didn't take it back, his alleged threat, she claimed Combs told her, "I know where you are right now, right on Lexington." After Smith contacted her personal lawyer amid legal action was threatened, she said Combs faxed over an apology 2 hours later. Y'all hear that? I don't put nothing past this. So Vibe, I would have been done with this man. I would have cut ties. But I guess that's what happens when you're in a partnership with somebody who is controlling. Oh man, defendant Combs and Combs control entities use the marketing and resources from the general business partners to facilitate his trafficking enterprise. Let's see. They failed, let's see, including their failure to ensure that their general business partners properly reported to the U.S. federal government. This man was not even reporting. Oh my gosh, allegedly. So Vibe PNC News shown that if they stopped assisting, supporting, facilitating the trafficking enterprise, they would no longer receive those benefits. Oh, what happened to my shared screen? Just went out. There we go. Let's see. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Defendants knew and was in reckless disregard of the fact that defendant Combs' pattern and practice to use the channels and instrumentalities of interstate commerce, vehicles, yachts, and commercial airplanes to entice, recruit, harbor, provide, and obtain transport individuals like plaintiff for the purpose of commercial lady of the night activities, which is a violation. So that is let's see. Defendant Combs' coercive demands as defendant kept his word and hired plaintiff then boyfriend Mr. Gallo in a nationwide Sean John clothing campaign. So pretty much what they're saying is like, hey, you guys knew what's going on, and she did not want for her boyfriend to lose out on an opportunity as well. So you better not go to the police. You better not say nothing, because if you do, this is what's going to happen. So all of this violated the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. And let me go down. All right. So the 30th cause is just the Obstruction of Enforcement of Trafficking Victims Act. Um, let's see. So they all knew, intentionally attempted to obstruct, and interfere and prevent the enforcement of 18 of the United States Code. Let's see. Trying to see. Let's see. Defendant Combs has a well documented history of criminal investigations. Defendants were on notice of Defendant Combs' proclivity to criminal activity. They knew or should have known that defendant Combs' trafficking enterprise would result in criminal investigation by the state and federal prosecutors for violating, among other laws, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Defendants should have taken a cue from the federal prosecutors' arrest and persecution of Jeffrey Epstein and or on or about July 8th, 2019. The United States Attorneys of the Southern District of New York indicted Epstein and unnamed associates for violating the TVPA. Later, on June 29, 2020, the same office indicted Epstein's conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, for conspiracy to entice victims to travel to be abused by Epstein. Defendant Combs, Jacob, Thomas, and Doe's all engaged in the same activities as Epstein and Miss Maxwell. In fact, defendant Combs, Jacob, Thomas, and Doe's may have done worse. If you are saying that Combs, Jacob, Thomas, and if they did worse than Epstein, that's diabolical. All of this pretty much means that they violated the TVPA. Ooh, wait. Hold on. Let me go through here. Start at this one. Upon information and belief, defendants' attempted obstruction, interference with, and prevention of the enforcement of the TVPA were all done intentionally and knowingly. For example, defendants knew that defendant Combs was high risk, specifically high risk to violate the TVPA through continued criminal trafficking activities. As evidenced by Ms. Ventura's civil complaint, she informed members of defendant Combs' parent label about the abuses he was visiting upon her. So, listen, the parent label. So she went to them and told them about the abuse, and they did absolutely nothing. I don't feel bad for UMG and all them, the Universal Music Group, to be, they really fighting hard or fought hard to get out of that Plaintiff Jones case. But here it states that she actually went to the label and expressed these things that was happening to her, and they did absolutely nothing. Upon information belief, defendants were aware Combs had a laundry list of criminal charges and barely escaped serving prison time. Defendants were aware that there were public allegations that defendant Combs' illegal conduct was facilitated by several named co-conspirators. They were made aware of this through complaints made by Miss Ventura and other lawsuits, including R&B singers Tremaine Neverson, aka Trey Songz, and Chris Brown. Defendants' intentional conduct attempt to obstruct, in many ways interfered with and prevented the enforcement of the TVPA, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, by investigators and prosecuting agencies. Man, this is sad. So that's that one. Seeking declaratory judgment for the actions and conduct of the defendants. Asking to be awarded an amount that should be determined in trial plus prejudgment interest, non-monetary compensation for damages for her mental anguish, humiliation, embarrassment, stress and anxiety, emotional pain and suffering, emotional distress, also damages regarding past loss, future income, loss of past and future income, wages, compensation, seniority, and other benefits. So she's saying because all this happened before Cassie and them, she should get some type of seniority when it comes to getting a getting an station for pain and suffering. 35. We almost done, y'all. We almost done. I'm sorry, I said 35, 31st. Now all of these are going to be against Vibe magazine and PMC. So this is the violation of the New York Civil Rights Act. Uh, and I'm like I said, I'm just going to read the important parts. Plaintiff alleges that the defendants Vibe and PM knowingly use plaintiff's picture, image, and likeness for the purpose of advertising and marketing their illegal trafficking enterprises disguised as a lavish and exclusive summer party, otherwise obtaining commercial gain, including without limitations through the infringing use and violation of the I'm about to say United States civil rights law, sections 50 and 51, as depicted her in when defendants Vibe and PMC published plaintiff's picture, image, and likeness without permission or consent of plaintiff in the November 2006 magazine. And I believe this is where she was dressed up in the white outfit. And I actually just redacted that part because I'm on YouTube and I just got monetized, so I don't want want them to strike my channel or do whatever it is. They they put that picture in there to entice people to go to these parties, and then they get there to be like, "Oh, this is her. Okay, this is what she do. Okay," and Diddy instructed her to do what? Yeah. Oh, now this part. It says that plaintiff's claims is timely as she discovered defendant Vibe and PMC infringing use in or about 2024. So, so before April 2024, she had no clue that they were using her picture in that magazine. I'm like, you never read the magazine? That's just my opinion, my only. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. The violation occurred in New York State. Let's see. There is no room for doubt that the identity of the person pictured in Defendant's Vibe and PMC's November 2006 magazine is plaintiff, and plaintiff is identifiable in that picture. They can't come back and say that's not her. We can see that it's her. Let's see. Plaintiff's picture was used for purposes of false advertisement and trade. Defendants Vibe and PMC may argue that incidental use except on defendant Combs' white parties was a newsworthy matter or a matter of public interest, which would be credulous untruth as defendant Combs' white party were a ruse to disguise a corrupt trafficking enterprise. Let's see. Vibe and PMC just kind of goes on. That plaintiff's likeness in those photos was a disguise advertisement to promote their co-conspirator Combs at the white parties and various entertainment businesses. Let's see. Defendants Vibe and PMC did not give a factual account of the plaintiff's presence at the white parties. Defendant Vibe and PMC print magazines falsely stating plaintiff was a guest striking a revealing pose. Oh, I see. So it's not like a regular pose that you take, but it was a prerogative healing pose, and that's okay. I see where y'all going there. Um, Despite plaintiff not being a guest of the party. Plaintiff was an employee who was required to act revealing, seductive, and sexually at the direction of defendant Combs in an effort to further benefit Combs and his co-conspirators' trafficking enterprise. All of that is in a violation of the New York Civil Rights Law, sections 50 and 51. and injuries to plaintiff such subject defendant Vibe and PMC to statutory damages and penalties, including punitive damages and amounts to be determined by jail. So pretty much each defendant, if they do find them liable, they're going to have to pay up. They're going to have to pay up. 32nd is the violation of Section 43A of the Layham Act uh, 15. Now, what is that? And I'm just going to go to this. So this is false designations of origin, false descriptions, and dilution forbidden. So in a civil action, any person who or on or in connection with any goods and services or in container for goods uses in in commerce any word, name, symbol, or device or any combination thereof, or any false designation of origin, false or misleading description of fact, or false of misleading representation of fact. A is likely to cause confusion or cause mistake or to deceive as to the affiliation, connection, or association of such person with another person, or as to the origin, sponsorship, or approval of his or her goods, services, or commercial activities by another person. Or B, in commercial advertising or promotion, misrepresents the nature, characteristics, qualities, or geographic origin of his or her or another person's or commercial activities, shall be liable in a civil action by any person who believe that he or she is or is likely to be damaged by such act. Now let's go back to here. So this is against Vive magazine. So all throughout this complaint, their participation in this is advertising and marketing these white parties, knowing the truth why these white parties happen. So he falsely implied that these parties were networking. It's like a networking event, when all actuality it was allegedly supporting the trafficking enterprise. Defendants Vibe and PMC commercially exploited and publicized plaintiff's image, likeness, and identity as part of the infringing uses, and in doing so created a false sponsorship and affiliation between plaintiff and all defendants. I don't know why this thing keeps going out. Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up. Yeah, every time I try to I get to reading and I don't know where my PDF went. And it's just not it's not showing. Let's see. This is crazy. There we go. All right. Let's see, where was I at? All right. Through the infringing uses, defendants Vibe and PMC have falsely implied that plaintiff endorses defendants' goods and services, like continuing the farce that defendant Combs' white parties were lavish, high-profile networking events, and or plaintiff was a willing participant in defendant Combs' trafficking enterprise. Mm. The unauthorized use of plaintiff image, likeness, and identity in defendant's Vibe and PMC November 2006 issue is likely to confuse, deceive, or mislead consumers into falsely believing that plaintiff approves, sponsors, or endorses defendant's goods or service of a business at issue, like continuing the farce that defendant Combs' white parties were lavish, high profile networking events as a willing participant in defendant Combs' trafficking enterprise. Let's see. Their conduct was likely to cause confusion or cause mistake or to deceive as to the affiliation, connection, or the association of plaintiff with all defendants, and as to the origin, sponsorship, or approval of defendants' goods, services, and commercial activities by plaintiff. Plaintiff's claim is timely as the Lanham Act does not contain a statute of limitations for claims under the Act, nor can the district court borrow from an analogous state statute. So she's also seeking damages under that particular act. The 33rd cause of action, and this is the last one. This is violation of common law, common law unfair competition. This is a tort um, or equitable injury that can occur when the competitors in the same market are unable to compete on equal terms due to the unfairness or deceptive practices of one of the parties. And the injured competitor can actually seek legal or equitable relief. I'm talking far too much. So in this one, an example here, it says that defendants Vibe and PMC commercially exploited as plaintiffs image, likeness, and identity as part of the infringing uses, and in doing so created a false sponsorship and affiliation between plaintiff and defendants. Through the infringing uses, defendant has falsely implied that plaintiff endorses defendant's goods and services, like continuing the farce that defendant Holmes' white parties were lavish, high-profile networking events, so forth. The unauthorized use of plaintiff's image, likeness, and identity in defendant's Vibe and PMC November 2006 issue is likely to confuse, deceive, or mislead consumers in falsely believing that plaintiff approves, sponsors, or endorses defendant's goods or services of the business at issue, like continuing the farce that defendant Combs' white parties are lavish, high profile, so on and so forth. So by them, publishing in here and using her image was more of a how can I say this? It was more of publishing her photo to create a narrative that these parties are like what they say. They're lavish, networking event, so on and so forth. But that's not what that was. I mean, you have her posing, not even well, in that particular picture, she was posing the way that she was posing. But if you want to actually advertise and market a lavish, high profile marketing event, why use that photo? Why photo? Unless you had another agenda for using that photo. Y'all get what I'm saying? So it's just like read between the lines, like, oh, okay, this is what happens at the white parties. That's where Vibe messed up at. That's where Vibe messed up at. So in this, the violation of the common law unfair, just and I'm just going to read the points. It says compel defendants Vibe and PMC as well as their employees, agents, or anyone acting in concert with them be enjoined from displaying, publishing, reproducing, or otherwise exploiting any material using plaintiff's picture, image, or likeness, or that otherwise violates plaintiff's right to see. Compel Vibe and PMC from using and displaying plaintiff's picture, image, or likeness in any manner. Award all profits from Vibe PMC sales of November 2006 issue of magazine, plus all losses of plaintiff, plus punitive damages if found applicable, and all costs and attorney fees, the sum to be proven at trial. So any funds that they received from the sales that November 2006 issue of Vibe magazine, she wants it. She want her exemplary damages under the NY civil rights law, and the lamp award her costs and fees for this, and whatever fees she has to pay, deposition fees, mediation fees, prejudgment interest by law, and anything that the court as proper. She wants that too. And she did submit a jury trial demand. So that is, whew, y'all, y'all, y'all. That is the end of 114-page complaint. We finally made it. So in summary, she she is suffering emotionally, psychologically from these white parties where Diddy made her do things against her will, made her ingest narcotics against her will, made her subject to abuse while unconscious against her will. And now she wants to be compensated under these different acts that they violated individually and collectively under the Combs enterprise. Everybody has similar stories. When she came out with this petition, when she filed it in July, I was like, oh my God, another one. And then the first two parts, I'm just like, okay, what is your goal here? I mean, you're pretty much saying, and I'm not downing what happened to her. I'm not downing that at all. But it's just some things that has been put out in the media. Well, in a complaint, she says she wants to get a service award, but in the media, it's I don't even, well, allegedly she had a demand list that she sent to her attorneys, and it was pretty much saying that since the lawsuit, she knows that she's going to start getting interviews and people are going to want to know her side of the story. So she was demanding, 5-star hotels, beautician for her nails, all these demands that you were like, okay, it's not that serious, cat. No other victim have gone to the extreme to have a demand list for people who want to interview her. So I was just like, okay, I think this lady is doing too much. But it is up to the courts to decide if Diddy violated these acts. And it's up to the jury if they don't reach a settlement in mediation to determine the amount that she needs to settle from each of those defendants. So, yes, I am going to keep an eye out on this Diddy case, all his cases, and I'm going to keep you guys updated. If you have not seen the other two parts of this and other cases that I've done, I do have a Diddy playlist that you can go over, and when you get some free time, just listen to it. It covers those complaints. I'm sorry. But like I said, this is part 3. So definitely let me know what you think about what we went over today, and include, what your thoughts were for the first 2 parts that we did over English versus Combs. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, I hope each and every one of you have a blessed day. Be blessed, be safe, be productive. Until then, see you later. Bye.